Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today. This is the first of 3 sessions we're going to be running over this spring. This one's entitled Low Budget, High Impact, Co-Designing Site Improvements. My name's Tim. I'm previously from Ethical Consumer Magazine. When this event was conceived, I was the project and product manager at Ethical Consumer. I'm not anymore, but I do still work with Agile Collective. I'm going to be joined by Steph, who is a designer and a co-op member of Agile Collective, and Maria, who's a developer and also a co-op member at Agile Collective, and Michael Wignall, whose job title I have to get right, be very precise about, and he is a website analyst and performance consultant at Ethical Consumer and Agile Collective and other organisations, I have to say. Is that okay, Michael?
Perfect, thank you.
Excellent. And so today, can I next slide, please, Michaela? And Michaela, we're ably assisted by Michaela, who's doing the slides. It's a very much team effort today. Thank you, Michaela. So what we'll cover today, we'll start with the challenge, understanding the problem and how we've used data, the solution, the collaborative design process, the impacts, so the results in some key metrics, and then our key takeaways, and then we'll have some room at the end for some breakout discussions. If you've got questions, please put them in the chat and we'll take them at the end of each section, and then a few more at the end. And over to you, Maria.
I'm just going to very briefly introduce Agile Collective. We are a worker-owned agency specializing in digital and websites for purpose-driven organizations. These lovely faces, we are a team of, among other things, designers, developers, project managers, and we all have varied passions and specialisms. And so this series of events that we're going to be running over the spring is an opportunity for us to introduce some of these passions and specialisms with you, hopefully share some of those. And just tonight, if you would like to join this array of beautiful faces, Agile Collective is hiring at the moment. We're currently hiring a Drupal developer. See our website, agile.coop, for more details on that. Back to you, Tim.
Yes. Thank you, Michaela. Didn't even need a cue for the slide. So a little bit about Ethical Consumer, for those who don't know. It's a magazine and website, and it was founded in 1989. Obviously, there was no website in 1989, but it was a very popular magazine. Their USP is around in-depth shopping guides, and we're going to talk about those quite a lot during this session because they're one of the key pages that we've been working on. Agile Collective built and supports the Drupal website, and they've been doing that for the past 7 years, and they do an absolutely brilliant job of it. I'm not sure if Dan's here. He's our support person, and he does a great job. It's great. So the site was launched in 2019. And other than an accessibility audit carried out by Maria, there hadn't been a lot of work done on the design of the site. There have been lots of minor changes, but not that much done around the design. We knew we wanted to make some substantive changes, but we didn't want to completely rebuild the site. We didn't think that was necessary. We'd done all the Drupal updates, etc., and we were quite happy with the site in general. And also we didn't have an enormous budget, so we wanted to see what we could do with quite a limited budget, and making as big an impact as possible. I think there's a couple of other people here from Ethical Consumer. Alison and Sarah, would you like to say hello as you're here? I'm putting on your spot. Don't worry if you don't want to. There's Sarah. She's my able replacement at Ethical Consumer. Hello, Sarah. And Alison, I think you're here. If you don't want to say hello, that's fine. Alison also works with us. There we go. There's Alison. She's absolutely brilliant. She's the site editor at Ethical Consumer, and she does a fantastic job. And she was instrumental in this process as well, even though she's not talking today. So thank you, Alison, for all your hard work. Next slide, please, Michaela. So we're just going to frame the challenge that we had. Next slide, please. So we monitor our analytics quite a lot. Michael works on the analytics, and we'd identified the sort of highest value pages and some of the problems associated with them. And we knew, because we didn't want to do this big redevelopment of the whole site, we wanted to target these high value pages. Michael, would you like to chip in? It looks like you do.
Yes, thank you, Tim. So one of the things about the ethical consumer site, like most sites, different pages or sections are really targeted to different audiences and different outcomes. So looking just specifically at these, e-commerce kind of speaks for itself. It's, it's a sales checkout journey. But as well as features, the two major components of the site are company pages. There are thousands of these that are programmatically generated to the greatest extent, maybe 50 of them being editorialized. And their main purpose, aside from as a tool for people who've actually already subscribed, is to get organic search traffic to the site, usually people who know nothing about ethical consumer already. So it'd be someone searching for Nike ethics, or is Apple ethical, or anything for hundreds, thousands potentially of different companies. And their main job really is to funnel those people, keep them on the site, they don't just leave, which was an issue, and funnel them to the shopping guides, which are about 140, 150 very carefully curated, information-rich pages that we know are the biggest drivers of people becoming subscribers. The business model for the magazine and the website is subscription. So these shopping guides and the company pages would have paywalls on them, and certain parts of the most interesting data, tables and what have you. And that's what drives people largely to becoming subscribers. So, thank you. We do ongoing data collection analysis, particularly each year I'll do a big review of how the site is performing. So as you can see, like for the shopping guides, a lot of what we're looking at there would be, is it driving sales? For the company profiles, it will be, is it keeping people on the site, and is it sending them to the shopping guides? Also, it can drive subscriptions. So we're measuring different things on different page types. Some of the things we noticed, like you can always improve effectively, driving sales, subscription clicks, getting people to the sales pages, and then conversion rates, exit rates, landing pages, what's the organic search traffic. One of the things that I suspected on this site is because at the top of the page, before we got into tables and things, we didn't have a lot of text. And this was becoming a problem as the organic search landscape becomes much more competitive. Ethical consumer, originally ethical terms, find me an ethical bank account, there was no competition. Now there's 50 or 100 sites that are all targeting the same kind of search terms. So that was important. And then in terms of the UX on the site, what people are actually doing, are they staying on, or are they moving the way we wanted to? Also, e-commerce conversion rates, again, you can almost always improve, but we knew there were particular problems with our pages. So next slide, please. So as well as having this kind of background data, because we knew we wanted to do a project, I set up a load of custom tracking on these particular pages in Google Tag Manager into GA4. So on the guides, are people clicking on paywall buttons and subscription asks and external shopping links? You know, you can go off and buy stuff, and we make a little bit of revenue off that. Similar on the company profiles. Are they interacting with the page? Are they using the tweets and emails to contact companies as kind of campaign ask? And for the e-commerce funnels, doing much more detailed funnels and path analysis. Breaking this down then by country, because the UK is a primary market, traffic sources, device, and the kind of broad audience type, which we know from where they're landing, where they're coming from, the kind of device they're on, and what they're searching for in order to get to the site. So if we have the next slide. Thank you. So this is just quite a basic thing in GA4. It's a sales conversion funnel. So we begin at step 1 with the sales page. You're always going to see a huge drop off from there because it's kind of tire kicking looking at sales page. Then getting into the actual e-commerce process. What we see is a really high abandon rate after the first step. It was horrible on the old in the old version, because you'd be sent to a page, it didn't have any real information on there. It just says login or create account. It's pretty shocking. So again, we break this down, looking at under particular issues on mobiles, particularly mobiles, tablets, not such a big deal. This is the kind of stuff, just kind of basic GA4 stuff. Next slide, please. We also used Hotjar. There's quite a lot of other tools, similar tools available. Hotjar, just because we're familiar with, even though it's become quite expensive. This will give us 2 things. One's heat maps, 3 things: heat maps and click maps. So how much of the page are people actually viewing before they disappear? Are they seeing what we think of as core content? You know, the stuff that we think will keep them on the page. Are they actually reaching it, for example? Are they seeing a proper summary of what's on the page? Because as I mentioned on the shopping guides, for example, the intros were quite tiny, and you had to actually look at the page to really realize what was on it. Click maps to identify what looks interesting to people, and we can separate that by desktop, tablet, and mobile. What are people just scrolling straight past because it doesn't look interesting? And a breakdown by device and so forth. So for those of you who are familiar, on the next slide, you'll be able to, you'll be familiar. This is just a basic heat map. Average fold shows what will appear on devices, you know, on different screen sizes. And then you'll get all the way down to the bottom of the page where it will be quite a cold blue, where you might only have, you know, 10–15% of people actually reaching that. But it gives you, with different devices, what people are actually looking at on your pages. And then the next slide is just kind of really basic, to give you an idea of what we see. These are click maps. So again, it's fairly self-explanatory. You'll see what people are actually clicking on the pages, which usually mirrors quite closely what they're actually seeing. Very often you'll find they're trying to click on things that aren't clickable, for example, if you've got design issues around there. This gives us, combined with the analytics data, a really clear idea of how people are using the pages. And then next slide, finally from me, we've got Hotjar session recordings. This takes time to look at, but you're recording the entire session of someone coming to the site until they're leaving. It can quite often be hours. So in fact, you can see, because of the way I've used the filters for the things I'm looking at here, a lot of these are very long sessions. Some of them an hour, you know, an hour and a half. Particularly, I'm looking for rage clicks, they're called, or U-turns, where people are getting confused by the navigation. And this is very much for the sales e-commerce. So I've got my sales funnels, but actually, what are people trying to do? Where are they getting confused? When are they going back? Because perhaps they've filled in some data and chosen a product, but that product isn't on the next page. Have I actually chosen the right thing? Do I need to go back and check, oh, how much did it cost? Right, now I'll go forwards again. And obviously, every time you get a step back or anything like that, your drop-off rates increase. So ideally, you want people to go through without any pauses to think, any changes. Minimum thinking for e-commerce is what drives conversion rates. Thank you.
Tim, you're muted.
I am muted. Schoolboy error. Sorry. Thanks for that, Michael. So once we've got all that data, we want to have a look at, obviously, how we can use it. But within that, we've got a whole bunch of sort of organizational constraints. And so what we needed to find was a way of having some targeted interventions. So obviously a big constraint is budget. Ethical Consumers are a relatively small organization. We knew that we didn't have the funds for a complete rebuild. You know, initially we'd spent over 120,000 roughly on the new website, which was money well spent, because we got a return on that investment within a year. Basically, it improved it was such an improvement on the original site, that we got a return very quickly. But obviously, you know, the organization as it is, we didn't want to spend too much money, so we had to think about the budget constraints, and we also had to think about the restraints in terms of our time. We're a really small team, with lots of different pressures. Obviously, that's something else that we had to take into account when we were doing it. Next slide, please. So the next stage of our process was looking at some how might we's. So obviously, based on all that data that Michael had put together, we were looking, like I said before, at shopping guides, company pages, and e-commerce. And so based on the data from Michael, we were having a look at how might we improve the navigation on shopping guides internally. How might we better promote the magazine as a product? Because obviously on the website, sometimes the fact that you can get a physical magazine gets lost. And we know for some other data that actually renewal rates are best when readers have got their physical magazine and they're not just accessing the website or the digital issue of the magazine. So we wanted to improve magazine placement. We wanted to improve call to action, such as signing up for the newsletter. We wanted to improve, obviously, click-throughs to the e-commerce. And we also wanted to improve SEO. So there's a big, long list of things to do there. For the company pages, we were looking at how we might prioritize important information on the page. So Steph's going to show some before and afters in a minute. But, you know, on those pages, they're very data rich, if you like. There's a whole load of information that we've got on companies, including stories about their supply chains, about their environmental impact, all sorts of things, animal rights. And so alongside that, there's quite complicated family trees on some of them. So it looks at like really complicated ownership structures. And sometimes a lot of that data can kind of get lost. And it's not necessarily clear to a user like where they should go or how they should interact with that. So we really wanted to improve that, as well as improving again, moving through to either shopping guides or e-commerce. And as Michael's already touched on, for e-commerce, we really wanted to reduce the cart abandonment rate. We knew there was one specific point that people were dropping out, and that was on the first proper part of e-commerce, if you like, where rather than selecting a product initially, you're having to sign in and sign up to the site, and that was really off-putting for people, and the drop-off rates were enormous there. So we really wanted to reduce that cart abandonment, especially during the first part of the process. Next slide, please.
Before we move on, can we just go back? Yeah, I just wanted to mention about like the power of how might we's and how they were really great at framing the problem from both the ethical consumer side, but also for us, when Agile Collective received this kind of brief from ethical consumer, we were able to look at these very specific kind of target areas. The how might we's are really powerful because they essentially allow you to be a bit more creative with how you want to express like change or, you know, improvements to a certain aspect of your site or your site as a whole, but without restricting yourself to a fixed solution, or you've already decided what the solution is. It allows that creativity room, but it's specific enough to give direction and point you down the right path. So I just wanted to put in a good word for how might we's, and they're a really powerful tool if you wanted to start thinking of your kind of design asks as how might we's. Sorry, continue, next slide.
Thank you. So yeah, the solutions. Next slide, thank you. So rather than us trying to come up with all the solutions on our own, we spoke to Agile Collective. sort of early in this process. So we had all the data, but actually we thought, rather than us trying to come up with all the solutions on our own, let's join minds with the brilliant people at Agile, and get a much better idea of how we might do some of these things. The next slide, please. Steph, is this one for you?
Yes, hello. So there was some prep beforehand that really lent itself useful once this sort of design was handed over to me, where Tim and Michael had done some thinking around the individual components of a page, what makes up the page, and what's the ideal priority structure. So they kind of came to me with this laid out, but sort of like, where do we go from here? So next slide, please.
Oh, sorry, sorry, just one more thing. So this sort of on this Miro board here, or we use Miro to do it, we're trying to create a page hierarchy. So we knew from the data, the Hotjar, for example, exactly, and survey data, actually, we did some physical surveys with so we're actually talking directly to our readers and subscribers. And these are hierarchies, so we know exactly what our readership wants, and so we can put that at the top. Things that they're less interested in go further down, and that really helps Steph to then come up with page designs. I should say Alison also helps with those.
Yes, thank you, Tim. So what that prep work really helped with is that kind of next phase, which is the design phase of this project. So Tim and Michael had done all the gathering of that data and processing it into those how might we's, and we then scheduled in a quick 45-minute workshop where we essentially covered the relevant user needs, and reviewing all of the information that Tim and Michael and Alison had come up with. We then looked at inspiration. We also reviewed the existing layout together, and talked about, what worked, what didn't work, all in a 45-minute session. And the reason it was so successful and we got through it so quickly was because Ethical Consumer had laid out a lot of the groundwork beforehand by understanding their users, understanding their data. So by collecting all of this information and understanding the user journeys, the collaborative design process was really clear, had a clear purpose. It was really streamlined and really enjoyable. And I will basically, yeah, so I think now is a good time to show you the before and afters of what the design kind of did and what we did together in this process. So on this slide, this is the kind of old first page that you landed on when you were checking out a subscription. And the issues that Michael had pointed out about, lots of abandonment, lots of confusion, especially actually, I think there was a page before this where you had to do that login situation. Yeah. This is technically the second page. Yeah. But if you go to the next slide, we restructured the checkout process, and we've also added a stepper so that it can help show users where in the kind of cart journey they're at. And we also added images in to help kind of grab their attention, but also make clear the differences between the two subscriptions that they were choosing for. On the next slide, you can see we carried through the kind of, on the right-hand side, that image and that, what subscription they were going through. And we also added the testimonials, which was one of the kind of wish list items. And that worked really well in that space. So you still have the same kind of contact detail form, but throughout the entire cart process, you are still kind of aligned with the subscription that you're purchasing. For not company profiles, for shopping guides, on this page, this is just us experimenting with different, these are just two of the many that we experimented with. So part of the, after the design workshop, I spent some time as a visual designer mocking up a bunch of different versions and kind of evaluating them together with Tim, Alison, and Michael. So on the very left is the original page and the original shopping guide, where we knew we wanted to add more text and add more information in that top hero section. But if we wanted to do it similar to what was already existing, it really stretches out that image. You know, the accessibility of text on image isn't really great. And in general, it just wasn't performing and doing visually, it just wasn't doing what we wanted it to. So we kind of started exploring more white space, adding in more, you know, reducing the load that the image takes up on the top part of the page, because realistically, these images were just supplementary to add some flair to the page. They're not conveying like super meaningful information. They're just setting the vibes for the shopping guide. So we can take a closer look on the next slide, which is what we settled for. We have on the left-hand side the guide, like the page menu, which allows you to jump to the section that might be relevant to you or that you're interested in. And we've utilized that white space and allowed for more text to appear at the top. That's sort of a summary text, and also included some little information on about our guides, which sits underneath the kind of jump menu to allow users to actually understand what kind of page is this, what kind of page am I looking at. So some simple restructures have already like lightened the top of this page and allowed users to kind of consume more meaningful information from this shopping guide. We also, as part of the of shopping guides and company profiles, there are paywalls for content that is subscriber only. So we did have that in the past, where, as you can see on the left, this is the original one, where we had these tables of like what to buy and what not to buy. That is public as in free information on the ethical consumer site. But there were, and you can see them in those teal buttons below them, subscribe to see which companies we specifically recommend, or subscribe to see which companies we encourage you to avoid. Those are the subscriber content. So it's about figuring out how do we group those two things in a way that, and just in a more efficient way. And you can see on actually, if you go back to the slide before, at the very bottom on the right, there's like a little teaser of what the score table was. So on the left, it was this big yellow block that kind of hid all the information on the table, and it didn't make it clear to users what to expect once they logged in or subscribed, what was behind that. So we actually exposed some of that, adding like a little gradient fill to kind of tease the information that you can expect with some like brand X and whatever information, just to sort of demonstrate this is what is behind the paywall. If you wanted to find out more, you can subscribe. And so we followed a similar approach for this block here, with showing, the headings and why specifically it's been blocked off for the paywall. Then we have the analysis section. So this, we just did a swap of the headers to kind of mimic that jump page menu at the very top of the page. And we added some clearer CTAs for subscribing that are kind of simplified from the original ones that Ethical Consumer had. And we've also pulled the author into that section specifically. They used to sit at the very top of the page, but now they're sort of married to that analysis content that they've written. And then lastly, for company profiles, which is the next slide, the beauty of doing all of that kind of design work and legwork on the shopping guides is because they are related. We were able to actually just borrow a very similar layout, a very similar structure, and apply it to these company profiles. So with company profiles on the Ethical Consumer site, they varied. Some had some analysis written in, so they were editorialized, but others were just kind of the standard sort of template from the database, with just information on whether to buy it, whether it's ethical, very base level details. So Amazon, for example, does have a lot of written content. So in the past, this kind of analysis was put at the very top of the page, and if it was very long, it pushed a lot of that information, and that's database information, at the bottom. So we ended up swapping that and actually putting that information at the top, followed by the analysis if there was one. And if there wasn't, that page would just remain the same as every other. That is pretty much a quick tease of all of the examples. I encourage you to take a look at the ethical consumer site and have a little explore of the shopping guides and the company profiles to see it more in action. But otherwise, that was the design love that we put into the site. Tim?
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, it was a really great process. Just from an ethical consumer point of view, it was great. It was great working with staff. We had loads of iterations, and we were really able to work together to improve the first pass. It was great having these different options that we could then sort of move things around, have a look at what worked and what didn't. And I think as we go on to impact, I think we're going to see that actually we might iterate some things again. It's been good so far, but there's probably going to be some small iterations, and that's great. Just really great working in this way that we're able to do that. So next slide, please. So obviously the pages have only been live for a short time, so we haven't got loads of data. As we move on, Michael will do another big piece of research to get all that data again so we can further improve the sites. But this is just some interim data that we've got from the last 3 months. So you can see straight away the old flow, e-commerce flow, 17.2% for checkout completion, and on the new flow we've already seen that jump to 54.2%, which is a huge improvement. So well done to Steph for that improved design. We can see it working already, and obviously we break that down into different parts, and we can see one component of that, the completion once they pass the login page. The completion's up 20% just in that particular step. So that's great to see as well. Next step, please. So for the guide pages, we can see the CTAs are already starting to work, with clicks up 17.5%. The paywall clicks, sorry, that's a duplicate, isn't it? They're the same thing, the CTA and the paywall. That's why it's the same stat.
No, they're not.
They're not.
Things.
It's a coincidence. Go on, Michael. What's the difference?
CTA is basically a sales box saying, if you sign up to Ethical Consumer, you will get this, subscribe here. Paywall is actually on the paywalled content where there's a button.
Okay. Sorry. So the paywalled part, for example, is where if you're a subscriber, you get to see Best Buy information and the information on the tables. Whereas if you're not a subscriber, you can't, and you have to subscribe to see that. So that's where the paywalls sit in front of the Best Buy information and in front of the guide tables, and the CTAs are further down in the text. Okay, that's great. And I think there's one more on there. Sorry, Michaela. And revenue per visit for landing pages on taking all the guides as a whole up 16%, which is brilliant. Good news for ethical consumers' mission, because they get more to spend on bash in the corporates. Next one, sorry, Michaela, thank you. So company profiles, it's more mixed. So paywall clicks are down 5%. Now I had thought about this just when we were looking at it. What we've done actually, the paywalls now are slightly lower down the mix, but what's higher up is the links out to the shopping guides. So it'd be interesting to see whether more people are going direct to the shopping guides, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, as opposed to going straight for the subscription. That's what we should look at. I only just thought that. And revenue per visit as a landing page up 30%. So despite the paywall clicks being down, the revenue as a landing page is up 30%, which if it's a landing page, they could go to a shopping guide and then to subscribe. So that could account for that as well. So that's interesting. So that's just some interim data. We will do lots more as time goes on. Michael, have you got anything to add on monitoring and evaluation? Don't worry if you haven't, but I thought you might. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
No, not especially. I mean, as you say, like doing a proper analysis on this, I'll be looking at people who are already on the site, because people signing up from the company profiles might be people who've spent 15 to 30 minutes on the site already looking at shopping guides and gone, okay, now I look at it. It's why the revenue per landing visit is so critical, partly because these are the pages that draw in, I think it's about half of the organic search traffic. And you're looking at a site that has 2 million organic search visits a year. So it's significant. And I'll also look at the flow between the company profiles and guide pages, despite that being ridiculously hard to do in GA4, as anyone who's been doing path analysis in GA4 will be able to tell you.
Thanks, Michael. Next slide, please. So some key takeaways. Steph, I think you're going to deliver these.
Yeah, so essentially, in case it wasn't clear, data is invaluable. It really helps you kind of pinpoint where you can make meaningful change on your site, especially when you start framing them as how might we's, as we explored earlier. Another key takeaway is involving us early. So obviously, Tim and Michael are also part of Agile Collective, so they also can think with their Agile Collective hat while also doing ethical consumer business. But that isn't to say that, you know, as designers and also as developers, we're also strategic partners. So, you know, we don't only just like take your asks and churn out code. And that's the end of the day. We also help you think through content, through your strategy. We've got account managers that can help talk you through some of the changes that you're looking for, and we can help you structure that change. Another key takeaway is understanding your users. So what all of this data does, and what all of this kind of how might we's and the design work that we do embedded throughout that entire process is this golden thread of user goals and user journeys and user needs. So really knowing who you are trying to target is the best way to kind of inform and make decisions on design or on changes to your website or even your content. It doesn't just apply to a website, it applies to everything that you do. So really empathizing with them and building your understanding of them is going to really help you in the long run. And lastly, the key point is small iterative improvements. And, you know, as Tim said, we could have rebuilt the entire site, but that was not really on the books. And so instead, we looked at, okay, what small specific change can we make that will actually, and as you can see, has led to a significant improvement in conversions and in, you know, engagement. So in general, we like to think that small iterative improvements for web is the way to go, is more effective than just, you know, complete overhauls. And it keeps your product or your website alive by constantly making small iterative improvements ever so often. So that is the end of the presentation.